We live in a nation divided, where words can ignite fires or forge bridges. As happens on rare occasions, we are standing at a crossroads. Free speech, the sacred flame that illuminated our founders' vision, now flickers under assault from those who'd wield power to silence dissent. We must confront the erosion of this bedrock right, not with anger, but with unyielding resolve. For if we allow the voices of the objectionable to be stifled today, tomorrow it may be our own truths that are extinguished. This is not just politics. It may very well be the soul of America hanging in the balance. Hello, and welcome to another supplemental installment of Back Porch Files from your neighbor on the left, a podcast about liberal politics, human decency, and life on the blue side of America's ideological divide. My name is Don Spielis, your host. Today we're tackling something fundamental: free speech. Not the abstract kind you read about in history books, but the real, messy version playing out right now in our headlines. We'll talk about why it's crucial, especially when it comes to stuff that rubs people the wrong way, and how recent events, like the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk, are being twisted to chip away at this right. Stick with me, this one's important, no matter where we land on the political map. Let's start at the beginning. What did our founding fathers really mean when they slapped free speech into the First Amendment? Back in 1789, guys like James Madison and Thomas Jefferson weren't just throwing words around. They had seen firsthand how kings and governments shut down critics to stay in power. Madison, who basically wrote the Bill of Rights, believed free speech was an unalienable right. Something you can't give away or have taken from you. It was about protecting your conscience, your ability to think and speak based on what you believe, without some authority dictating otherwise. Jefferson put it bluntly in a letter, quote, "The only security of all is free press. The force of public opinion cannot be resisted when permitted freely to be expressed," end quote. They knew that in a democracy like ours, free speech keeps leaders accountable. It's how we, the people, call out corruption, debate ideas, and push for change. Without it, representatives could do whatever they wanted, and we'd be none the wiser. Benjamin Franklin nailed it when he said, quote, "Freedom of speech is a principal pillar of a free government. When this support is taken away, the constitution of a free society is dissolved," end quote. These weren't just lofty ideals. They were safeguards against tyranny. But here's the key point, and it's one that gets lost sometimes today. Free speech is most important when the speech is objectionable. Yeah, the stuff that makes you cringe or boil. Think about it. Protecting popular opinions is easy. Nobody's trying to shut those down. It's the unpopular, the divisive, or the outright offensive speech that tests our commitment. As Justice Louis Brandeis once wrote, quote, "If there be a time to expose through discussion the falsehood and fallacies, to avert the evil by the processes of education, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence," end quote. The founders got that. They figured that in a free market of ideas, truth would win out over lies, and bad ideas would get debunked by better ones. Fast forward to now, and we're seeing this principle twisted in real time. Take the heartbreaking assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10th at Utah Valley University. Kirk, the Turning Point USA founder, was shot by 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who reportedly confessed he did it because, quote, he had enough of his hatred, end quote. It's a tragedy. No question about it. Political violence has no place in America, period, end of sentence. But now look at how many on the right are framing this as a massive affront to free speech. They say, Kirk was killed for his views, and they're using it to rally against the radical left rhetoric that supposedly incites violence. Fair enough. Hate and violence are wrong. But then, in the same breath, these folks are pushing for firings and investigations and other repercussions against anyone who dares comment critically on Kirk's divisive rhetoric. We're talking about people online saying things like they don't sympathize with his death or pointing out his controversial takes on subjects. Suddenly, those comments are labeled celebrations of his murder, and the right insists they're widespread and rampant. But are they? From what I've seen, it's isolated posts amplified by influencers to paint the entire left as bloodthirsty. It's not a mass movement. It's cherry picking to fuel outrage. And this hypocrisy runs deep. The president himself, along with folks like J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller, have a long history of inflammatory rhetoric. Trump has called for vengeance and retribution, talked about enemies within, even joked about violence against journalists. Remember his comments about the Second Amendment people, or retweeting stuff about civil war? But now they're acting like the left has cornered the market on dangerous talk. No side is innocent here. Both have their extremists. But let's not pretend one group is pure. As the Bible says in Matthew 7:3, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? This brings us to a chilling example. Jimmy Kimmel being yanked off the air. On his show, Kimmel quipped about the MAGA crowd trying to distance the shooter from their side, saying something like, quote, we hit some new lows with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, end quote. It was sharp, of course, but it's late night comedy, not an address to Congress, as if that should matter in terms of free speech. Enter FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, a Trump appointee who blasted it as, quote, the sickest conduct possible, and threatened ABC with license issues. He even said on a podcast, we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. That sounds more like a mobster than a public official. Hours later, ABC pulls Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely. Why? Well, ABC's parent, Disney, has affiliates like Nexstar and Sinclair who need FCC approval for big mergers. Nexstar's got a $6.2 billion deal with Tegna pending, which requires the FCC to relax ownership rules. Sinclair's in the mix too. This isn't coincidence. It's pressure. Remember, this echoes CBS cancellation of Stephen Colbert amid their own merger drama. When networks bow to public outcry or sponsors pulling ads, that's market forces. That's fair game. But when the president and his administration force the issue through regulators, that's government-sanctioned censorship. Plain and simple. It violates the spirit of the First Amendment, where the government shouldn't pick winners in a speech game. And it's not just TV hosts. Attorney General Pam Bondi jumped in saying the DOJ would target hate speech that crosses into threats. She faced backlash even from conservatives for muddying free speech waters. But get this. The DOJ very quietly scrubbed a study showing far-right extremists have committed more ideologically motivated homicides than left-wing ones. A Cato Institute report said since 2020, right-wing attacks caused 44 deaths versus 18 from the left. Bondi pulling that report? It smells like hiding facts that don't fit the narrative of radical left violence being the biggest threat. Folks, no matter your politics, this road we're on should scare the hell out of you. The right isn't pushing for calm or cooperation. They're adding fuel to the fire, using Kirk's death to crack down on opponents. It's hypocritical when the president and his allies have dished out plenty of inflammatory stuff themselves. We're seeing a surge in political violence, attacks on lawmakers, arsons, shootings, and it's hitting both sides. But instead of uniting against it, we're dividing further. As John Stuart Mill put it, quote, "If all mankind minus one were of one opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind." End quote. We need more speech, not less, to sort this out. In President Trump's first address to Congress after being sworn in for his second term, he said, "Free speech is back." I want to hold him to that concept. So let me wrap this up with a plea. Cooler heads must prevail. We need to cooperate across the aisle, reject violence from any side, and preserve free speech as the founders intended. Not just for the speech we like, but for all of it. Because without that, we're not the land of the free anymore. We're just one more place where power silences truth. All right, thank you for listening, folks, to my rant this week on Back Porch Files. I encourage you to reach out to the podcast if you have questions or comments or thoughts or suggestions. You can do that using any of the social media platforms for the podcast. The links to those are all on our Linktree page, and the Linktree address is listed in the episode description. You can also reach out to the podcast via email. The email address is neighborotleftpodcast@gmail.com. We'll be back on Tuesday with another full episode. Until then, stay loud, stay tolerant, and have the week you'd wish for others.